What is the single most expensive, highly regulated, and universally forced piece of technology you currently own? It is definitely not your smartphone. It is not your car. It is your pants. Seriously, let's be entirely honest here. That piece of fabric you are wearing right now while watching this, the one you are calling loungewear because it sounds like a sophisticated, intentional lifestyle choice, is actually just the exact same pair of baggy gray pajamas you have been wearing for 3 days straight. But have you ever stopped to wonder why we do this? Why do billions of us, every single morning without fail, participate in this bizarre ritual of covering ourselves up? Putting on clothes is so deeply baked into our daily existence that we have built an entire global legal system around the simple, desperate request of, please put some pants on. If you walk outside completely naked today, the state will actively intervene, dispatch a police cruiser, and physically arrest you. We collectively agreed to pay a lifetime biological tax of putting on trousers just because our ancestors decided to overcomplicate survival with social anxiety. Think about that. The state will literally lock you in a cell if you are too naked in public. Why are we so terrified of our natural bodies? Meanwhile, literally every other animal on Earth is totally fine going commando. Your dog doesn't wear clothes. Wolves don't wear clothes. The elephant, which is objectively smarter than half the people you went to high school with, has never once stared at a rainstorm, sighed, and thought, man, I really need a leather jacket for this. So what is the real reason we got dressed? The short, easy answer that gets thrown around is that we got cold. But the real answer, it is way more interesting, slightly chaotic, and it involves a parasite evolutionary clock that is equally disgusting and absolutely genius. It is a story of how a naked, fragile ape hacked the planet, invented secrets, and turned a piece of dead animal skin into a global superpower. And it all begins with one giant biological mystery: the naked ape problem. Why are we naked in the first place? If you look at the mammalian world, humans are absolute freaks of nature. Gorillas are covered in thick fur. Chimpanzees are covered. Bears, lions, wolves, horses, all of them are walking around in luxurious natural coats of hair. And then there is us, standing in the middle of all this biodiversity, just smooth, patchy, and weirdly pink in some places, sporting an evolutionary look that basically says, I used to have a great coat, but I made some very questionable life choices. Now, if you have been watching some of those generic, lazy AI scripted channels on YouTube lately, they might tell you that elephants and hippos are covered in thick fur coats. Honestly, if you ever see a furry hippo, you should run, because that is a terrifying glitch in the Matrix. In reality, hippos are as bald as we are. They stay submerged in water all day to prevent sunburn and secrete a weird red, slimy mucus that acts as a natural sunscreen and antibiotic layer. Elephants just throw mud and dust on their backs to keep from frying under the sun. So why did we lose our fur while our primate cousins kept theirs? The answer is persistence hunting. As our ancestors moved from the shaded forest canopies to the open grasslands of the African savanna, they had to adapt to a new style of survival, chasing down prey over extreme distances under the baking sun. In that environment, being covered in thick fur was a literal death sentence. You would overheat instantly. Your core temperature would spike, your brain would cook, and you would collapse before you could catch your dinner. Persistence hunting was an absolute masterclass. Our ancestors would track an animal under the midday sun. The animal had speed, but it could not sweat. The humans would keep jogging, forcing the prey to run again before it could cool off. Eventually, the animal would collapse from heat exhaustion. That was our superpower, but the trade-off was that we became fragile when the temperature shifted. So, over hundreds of thousands of years, evolution stripped away our thick fur and gave us an absolutely insane upgrade: 2 to 4 million sweat glands. We became elite, professional-grade sweating engines. If there were an Olympic Games for sweating, humans would take gold, silver, and bronze without even trying. But this leads us directly into a massive paradox. If we lost our fur to stay cool during the day, how did we not freeze to death when the sun went down? This is where the conventional story completely breaks. Most people assume that humans moved out of Africa, hit colder climates, got cold, and immediately wrapped themselves in animal skins. It is simple, clean, and logical. Except the timeline is completely broken. Modern humans did not migrate out of Africa in significant numbers until around 70,000 years ago. Yet genetic evidence evidence suggests we started wearing clothes consistently somewhere between 100,000 and 170,000 years ago. This means we were getting dressed in the tropical warmth of Africa nearly 100,000 years before we ever encountered snow. And for those who think Africa is always a boiling desert, let's correct that myth right now. In the high deserts and plains of Africa, temperatures drop dramatically at night. The temperature shock can easily drop to near freezing. A hairless, wet, sweating ape in a freezing desert night is an easy target for hypothermia. Consider that nighttime savanna cold. The afternoon heat evaporates, leaving a windy landscape where heat radiates into the atmosphere. If you stand there naked, your body dumps heat fast. You are shivering and your core temperature is dropping. This cold was a constant threat. So how do we know exactly when we started covering up? To solve this, we have to look at the most unlikely historian in human history, the body louse. You see, humans host two distinct types of lice, head lice and body lice. Head lice live in your hair, but body lice, they live specifically in clothing, in the seams, the folds, and the fabric. They literally cannot survive on bare human skin because they need the structure of fabric to cling to, hide, and lay eggs. By mapping the DNA of these parasites, geneticists at the University of Florida discovered that body lice genetically split from head lice around 170,000 years ago. The explanation is mind-blowing. A universally hated parasite accidentally preserved the exact timestamp of human fashion. We were wearing clothes consistently enough to create a brand new ecological niche for a bug. But if it wasn't just about the cold, what else was driving us? This brings us to our next major question. What was the first piece of clothing actually designed to do? Was it to cover our shame? No, that came much later. Was it to look cool? Not yet. The answer is twofold. It was a portable storage system, and it was the world's first biohazard suit. Let's look at the utility first. As nomadic hunter-gatherers, our ancestors had to travel light, but carry heavy. They had to transport stone tools, cutting implements, food, and water. But most importantly, they had to carry their helpless infants who couldn't walk yet. But humans only have two hands. If you are holding a baby in one arm and a stone spear in the other, you are completely defenseless against a sudden predator attack. You cannot climb trees, you cannot forage efficiently, and you cannot run. The earliest clothing probably was not a shirt or pants. It was a carry sling, a crude, durable wrap of animal hide designed to secure a baby to a parent's chest or back. This single invention was a massive game changer. It kept the baby warm, secure, and left the parent's hands completely free to hunt, gather tools, and climb. Before clothing was a coat, it was humanity's very first backpack. Think about carrying water. Before plastic bottles, we used hollow gourds or animal bladders. How do you carry water while tracking prey? You can't hold it in your hands forever. You need straps and loops. The moment we created wraps around our hips, we created a mechanical harness to carry survival gear. This upgraded our carrying capacity. At the same time, we had to deal with the real rulers of the savanna, insects. The African savanna is crawling with mosquitoes, tsetse flies, ticks, and chiggers. In a world without modern medicine, a mosquito outbreak was not just annoying. It was a biological threat. Malaria and other vector-borne diseases could wipe out an entire tribe. Wrapping the torso and groin in basic skins created a physical shield against these deadly pests. Furthermore, if you have ever tried running naked through tall, thorny grass, cactus patches, or poison ivy, you know exactly why you want a barrier. One slip against a briar and your delicate private parts are in serious trouble. Clothes were replaceable armor, protecting our most fragile skin from a hostile environment. So how did we transition from loosely wrapping animal skins to actual structured tailoring? The answer is prehistoric engineering, and it centers around one of the most disputed tools in archaeological history, the bone needle. For a long time, clothes were just heavy skins draped over the shoulders, the prehistoric equivalent of wearing a heavy leather trash bag. It worked, but it was stiff, bulky, and difficult to move in. But then, around 50,000 years ago, everything changed. Archaeologists began finding bone needles. The oldest confirmed needle with a proper eye was found in the Denisova cave in Siberia, dating back approximately 50,000 years. It was crafted from the hollow bone of an ancient bird, polished to a mirror shine, with a microscopic hole bored through the end. This represents a cognitive leap that is difficult to overstate. Someone looked at a sliver of bird bone, envisioned a tool that did not exist, figured out how to drill a hole through it without splitting it, and used it to join materials with a controlled, repeatable stitch. That is pure design thinking and engineering. However, there is a fascinating archaeological debate here. Many modern experts dispute whether this needle was actually made by the Denisovans or if it belonged to a later layer of anatomically modern humans that intruded into the deeper layers. Some experimental archaeologists have even proven you can produce beautifully tailored clothing using sharp stone tools and leather cords without ever needing a bone needle. But regardless of the needle controversy, the concept of tailoring changed the rules of survival. In the sub-zero glacial winters of the Ice Age, loose skins were useless. Wind would cut right through them. To survive, humans needed fitted, layered, wind-proof clothing that sealed heat against the wrists and neck. The needle, or the tailoring techniques of the time, was the technology that allowed our fragile bodies to conquer the coldest corners of the planet. This raises an interesting follow-up question. Were modern humans the only ones clever enough to figure this out? The answer is a definitive no. Our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, were systematically processing animal hides long before they ever met us. We have found Neanderthal stone scrapers specifically designed for leatherworking, with wear patterns showing they spent countless hours preparing soft, flexible skins. Neanderthals had stockier bodies and shorter limbs to conserve heat, but in the brutal European winters, they absolutely required clothing to survive. It was not a luxury, it was a biological necessity. Even the mysterious Denisovans, the lineage we only discovered in 2010, were crafting pierced ornaments and decorated garments in their Siberian caves. They were decorating their clothing to project identity and belonging. This shows that clothing was not a unique invention of Homo sapiens. It was a smart bipedal primate solution to environmental pressure. But if clothing started as survival, when did it become something deeper? When did it become a visual language? To answer this, we have to look at what humans were doing before they ever got dressed. We know that our ancestors were using red ochre pigment for body decoration as far back as 200,000 years ago. We were painting our skin long before we were covering it. Why? Because we are obsessively social creatures. We need to communicate identity, rank, and tribal affiliation without speaking a word. When clothing appeared, it immediately absorbed this symbolic role. The question quickly shifted from, does this keep me warm, to what does this hide say about me? If you were the most successful hunter in the tribe, you did not wear a basic deer skin. You wore a leopard pelt. It was an instant, silent broadcast of your strength, prowess, and status to the entire group. This tribal differentiation was critical when nomadic bands met. If your tribe wore matching hides dyed with specific ochre colors, you could instantly tell ally from enemy from 100 yards away. It prevented accidental conflicts and established boundaries. Clothing was our first uniform, our first passport, and our first flag. In every culture across history, clothing has carried symbolic weight. Rulers wore colors and fabrics that commoners were forbidden from touching. Priests wore garments designed to separate them from the secular world. The dead were buried in specific clothes to denote their social standing in the afterlife. This is the fundamental weirdness of human clothing. No other animal uses artificial materials to construct a personal narrative. A peacock displays its feathers, but it cannot choose to dye them blue because it wants to look more sophisticated for a meeting. We can. We use our second skin to tell the world exactly who we are, which tribe we belong to, and how much power we hold. But this brings us to the most controversial question of all. When and why did nudity become a crime? Why did we develop such a profound sense of shame around our natural bodies? The answer lies in the shift from mobile hunter-gatherer bands to settled agricultural societies. In small nomadic tribes, nudity was often completely normalized. Even today, some uncontacted tropical cultures wear nothing more than a simple cord around the waist or a minimal genital cover. Nudity was not inherently shameful, it was just practical. But when we invented farming, built cities, and established social hierarchies, everything changed. Clothing became the ultimate tool for social control and division. The elite used elaborate, heavy garments to separate themselves from the working class. To be unclothed became associated with poverty, slavery, and being outside civilized society. Nudity was no longer just a natural state, it was a mark of low status and defeat. At the same time, clothing became politically valuable for managing sexual dynamics. Humans are unique among primates because we have year-round sexual readiness. By covering the genitals and reproductive areas, societies could manage sexual distraction, reduce conflict within the group, and enforce strict social rules around mating. It also served to disguise involuntary sexual responses like erections or nipple hardening, which in a highly political tribal setting could reveal dangerous information about allegiances or desires. This is true for female menstruation. In the wild, blood is a beacon for predators like lions and hyenas. To survive, women covered up using absorbent mosses and hides. It was a matter of life and death. The shame around these processes was layered on top of a practical survival strategy. Modesty was a social technology to keep populations from tearing themselves apart. And once we started down this path, there was no going back. We transitioned from heavy, stiff animal hides to woven plant fibers. The oldest known twisted plant fibers, dyed in multiple colors, were found in a cave in Georgia and date back 30,000 years. By the agricultural revolution, textile production became the economic engine of the world. Flax, wool, cotton, and silk became currencies. Trade networks like the Silk Road transported fabric across continents, and empires were financed by our obsession with what we wear. So why did ancient humans start wearing clothes? They did it for all of these reasons, happening in overlapping waves. It started as a practical shield against the sun, thorns, and disease. It transformed into a survival necessity during the freezing cycles of the Ice Age. It became a social technology to organize our growing tribes, a political tool to manage sexual dynamics, and ultimately a canvas for our egos. And the most remarkable thing is that you are participating in this exact same 170,000-year-old game right now. Tomorrow, when you stand in front of a closet packed with shirts complaining you have nothing to wear, thank those ancient hairless apes. They spent thousands of years dropping their fur and engineering the needle just so you could look cool. So what about you? If you had a time machine, would you go back and live completely naked? Or are you too attached to your pockets? Would you wear a simple animal hide with status symbols, or would you stick to your oversized graphic hoodies? And let's be real, are you currently wearing pants right now? Or did you make the bold, liberated decision to go naked too?